Welcome back, everyone, to the Virtual Cafe Summer Series. I'm joined today with Lisa D, one of the OGs of the Australian pole industry. Welcome, Lisa.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. Today we
Pleasure.
are chatting to everyone about how to create a safe home pole environment and effectively how to set one up. Like for anyone who's interested at home, learning sort of the what to look out for, the step by step, and things they should consider when actually looking at setting up a home pole. So there's lots. I get heaps and heaps of questions about these in my DMs all the time. So I thought we'd just tackle it all today in one big talk and chat with one of the experts of the industry, someone who really knows their shit. So yeah, I figured let's talk to you and pick your brain as to what we need to know about home polling. Before we kind of get into it, a little bit more about you. So I said that you're one of the OGs of the Australian pole industry, been around for quite some time.
So long, since the dinosaurs, about 21 years. Yeah, but
Yeah.
when the dinosaurs did in fact roam the earth.
I love that.
Pole dancing was very different when we all had the little T-Rex arms.
I was going to say little T-Rex dinosaurs. I'm just picturing people who dress up in those T-Rex costumes just 20 years ago walking around a pole. Not quite.
That was us.
I love it. I was going to say, so then on top of being one of the OGs, you're now a co-owner of PoleSphere, which you have very beautifully worn one of your tops today. And
oh yeah.
Do you want to do a little cheers as well whilst we're here? I was going to say.
I do. Yeah. Yes, we have very professionally branded merch. Delicious.
Oh, love it. So Lisa's one of the co-owners of PoleSphere with Ali and Jane. So they've put together this fabulous platform that we'll chat about later today. So they really do know their stuff when it comes to talking about polling from home. So that's why you're on board today to pick your brain and get all the top tips out there for everyone. So I guess I know from their personal experience going through many Melbourne lockdowns, and you would have as well.
Yeah.
So every Melburnian knows the last few years have been a bit of a struggle, and the surge of polling from home really took off. Like before lockdowns and COVID, I had a home poll that was used to, personally for me, it was used to train what I was learning throughout the week, but it certainly wasn't utilized very frequently. And then COVID hit and boom, the surge of home polling, like it took off.
It really took off, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere either. Like I think a lot of people kind of jumped into home polling and then went, "Ooh, I love it." So yeah, it took off, and it's kind of here to stay, I think, even though it's always been around. But yeah, it's here to stay at that higher level.
Yeah, and for me, I always used it as an adjunct to what I was learning at the time, but I never really saw it as a possibility for me to learn new things on my own. And now there are platforms like PoleSphere out there that actually help you to learn new moves and progress and actually grow as an individual. It's fabulous. So you're right, it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No,
so
it's not going anywhere. Tiny fun fact, on home polling, I actually trained for and competed in a state competition way back when on my home pole, and I won the comp. Like
what?
This is 2008. I won Miss Pole Dance Queensland, primarily training in my living room.
Love that. That's so good.
Yeah. It's been around for a long time, home polling, but it's having its renaissance now.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, I had in the room that I'm currently in, that no one can see because I'm in a cafe currently. But in my my work office, my study, this used to be my pole room, so it was a very tiny ceiling. It was like less than 2 meters. I managed to get a pole in there, and I was trying to invert. Yeah, it was more so a conditioning pole, I think, as opposed to a proper pole. But now my current pole setup's in my garage downstairs, and it's converted. It's no longer a garage; it's a pole studio, and that's a lovely 3+ meter pole, and it's such a difference. It makes a
even if you have to have a really little, even if you have a really low ceiling where you are, a conditioning pole is still useful. I mean, your current setup sounds amazing, but even if you are in this space with this really low ceiling. I lived in one place, because I lived in a few different places with my home pole, where we had a low ceiling and a ceiling fan. And I still used my pole, and it was still useful to me. So, you can kind of work with what you've got.
Yeah.
But yes, your current setup now sounds more ideal for sure.
More ideal, but you're spot on. I learned how to invert on that pole, my home pole. So
exactly.
Yeah. there's so much you can do with small poles, but we'll talk all about that. So, well, I mean, let's start with step one. Like for those who are wanting to pole at home or thinking about it, I guess first thing to do is to pick a pole. So one of the most common DMs I get is, what pole brand should I buy? So I'm going to throw it straight to you. What pole brand should people buy?
My opinion is X-Pole. I have been an X-Pole brand ambassador. However, so that makes me sound very, very biased. However, I will say this: I've been offered ambassadorships for a few companies throughout the years that I have turned down because I didn't feel like I was keen on their products. But I said yes to X-Pole because I was genuinely keen on their products, had used their poles as my own home poles, them and Pussycat Pole I had used as my own home poles, and had used them in studio and knew that they were good. So like really good. So X-Pole is the one I do recommend for home polling. They're extremely safe. They have been engineered with pole dancing in mind. They're not decorative, you know, they're not flimsy. They're purpose built, they're purpose engineered, they're strong as hell. They come with a great set of instructions on how to install, how to maintain, how to keep yourself safe using them. You know, it's kind of like a complete package when you get an X-Pole.
Yeah,
that's what I reckon.
So I'm not biased because I don't have brand ambassadorship. So for my personal experience, for everyone watching, I'm also an X-Pole girl. So I much prefer X-Pole compared to any other. So all the poles I've ever purchased have been X-Pole. However, in terms of other poles that are really safe to use, Lupit's another brand, Pussycat poles definitely. So there's
Pussycat.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Pussycats. I've been on those poles and I really quite enjoy them. So
for people who don't know the difference, X-Pole, so I've used Pussycat as well. Pussycat's an Australian brand, as is X-Pole. Oh no, well, Pussycat's an Australian brand.
X-Pole's
a UK brand.
Yeah.
That ambassador. X-Pole has a strong presence in Australia. Yeah, they have an Australian office. They have heaps of Australian staff. They're big in Australia, and Pussycat is Australian owned. But the difference between the two is most people know what an X-Pole looks like. It comes in segments, right? That you can build the height of your pole up to only a certain height, but you can build the height of your pole to suit your room. Whereas Pussycat poles are custom cut to suit the height of your space. So if you purchase a Pussycat pole, you need to send them very precise measurements of your space, and they will custom cut a pole for that space. And they're strong and reliable as well.
They're gorgeous. I love them. I was lucky enough to pole on a Pussycat that was like 4 meters last month.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is just delightful and a little bit terrifying at the same time. I was like,
so high.
Yeah, it was fun. But yeah,
great.
They're great poles. So I'm very much so, when anyone asks me what, pole, like, it's up to you, do your own research, because there's going to be pros and cons in terms of actually choosing the brand. But the one thing I always say is, do not buy your eBay poles. Do not buy your cheap flimsy. And there was a question about this recently on a Facebook page I'm a part of, and they put up a picture going like, anyone had any experience with these? And I'm just like, do not do it. They are not engineered to take our load. They might be okay for decorative dancing. I'll say that in if you're doing just dancing around the pole, fine. But if you go to lift your body weight up, there are some disaster stories of those poles snapping in half. Like the rate of fails, pole injuries are just so much higher on those poles. But I know that they're obviously a lot cheaper, and finances can certainly come into play for some people. So I think for anyone out there who wants to set up a home pole, but they maybe don't have a big budget, check out definitely some Facebook pages. They do secondhand pole gear, and poles do get sold on that. So if you can buy a secondhand X-Pole or Pussycat pole that suits your measurements, that would be very lucky. But all the other brands out there that are actually reputable, definitely check them out, because I tell people time and time and again, stay clear of your cheap eBay poles. They can be disastrous. Yeah,
they can be. And a lot of people think that the big problem is that they fall over, which, yes, that is a problem. But your real danger is that they snap in half. I mean, you could die. Like, it's not, I've said before, and I'll say it again, if they're selling this thing on eBay for $100, exactly how much custom engineered steel, brass, chrome, or titanium do you think $100 purchases? And the answer is like, it doesn't. You're just buying some alfoil and plastic. Like, don't do it.
Yeah. And what's your life worth, right? Like, it's kind of like is would you pay $100 for your own safety, or would you rather pay $800 to be really safe? Yeah.
And you can get decent deals on secondhand X poles. Like, they have a really good lifespan. Someone's used their X pole for 2-3 years and wants to sell it. That pole is almost certainly still going to be safe and have a really long lifespan ahead of it. And you can get it for way less than you would have bought it new. So secondhand X poles, secondhand loopets, secondhand pussycats if they fit your space.
My studio downstairs, my tall pole, that's a secondhand pole. I think I was 2 or 3 years, was barely used. It was perfect. I paid pretty much half the price. I'm actually in the process of buying a second pole, which is an X studio pole, and I'm lucky enough I'm managing to get it for $100, and it's an X pole, and I know, right? I'm very lucky. So good, managed to get a deal. So definitely, and it was literally through a secondhand page, but through one of the studios that I know, so I know it's going to be a good pole, and it will be one of my home office poles. So it'll be when I'm seeing my patients and I'll just need to show a conditioning drill. So I'm like, this is perfect for that situation. Even if it has some wear and tear on the outside, it's such sturdy poles. So X poles keep their main.
I'm gonna sneeze.
Oh, that's all right. Bless you preemptively. Maybe not now that I've said it.
Okay, no, I'm not. Sorry, it felt really urgent for a second. I was trying to stifle it.
I take my bless you back. It's redacted. All right, so people have picked their pole. They've picked their pole brand that they want to go for. There's, we've talked about mounted poles. There's also stage poles. That's the other option that people might not feel comfortable putting in a mounted pole. So that's definitely stage poles an option. There are some pros and cons of that, which we won't go too in depth with. But I think the main thing when people are looking at picking a pole is looking at, do you have a ceiling or do you have a false ceiling? And does your ceiling have
That's
so
right.
they're pretty important, right?
Yeah. And if your ceiling, if you have joists, beams behind your ceiling and your ceiling plaster is basically flush with them, then you can get your pressure installed pole, or your mounted pole. That's going to work. If you have a concrete ceiling of some kinds, various kinds, that's probably going to work with your mounted pole. But if you have a floating ceiling where the plasterboard or whatever material of your ceiling floats away from the substructure of the ceiling, you're either going to need to cut a hole in that, get the pole doctor to come in and install your pole through up into the structure. That's it's money, and you got to cut a hole in your ceiling. Or easier, get a stage pole. And the stage pole doesn't actually, for people who don't know, the stage pole doesn't touch your ceiling. The stage pole is a base that you assemble that has a pole coming out of it, freestanding, and it doesn't touch your ceiling. So if your ceiling's not suitable for your mounted pole, stage pole is a good go.
Yeah. So I guess the easiest con straight away is like there's a stage, and it means that you have to step on and step off. So if you're doing any floor work, that can impede that. But also that's the sturdiest part of the pole is the base. And so it means that the higher up you get the pole can start to wobble a bit. So if you're not used to that and you're trying to invert, that might feel a little bit off-putting when first starting. But if you're like inverting from the bottom of the pole, then that might feel comfortable. The more pole experience you have, the more you're used to stage poles and the less disconcerting it can feel. I remember my first time on a stage pole and I almost cried.
I remember how wobbly it feels when you first start as well, but you do get used to it. As you know, I've done a couple of performances on stage poles that I've had to train for on stage poles, and by the time you do 2 or 3 days training for your piece, you're kind of just used to it, and it just feels normal to you. So it feels weird at first, you get used to it.
I literally almost shit myself. I swear I was like flying around in my head, like it felt like that. And then I watched back the video and there was like that much movement.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I felt like I was going to fall. So yeah,
Oh,
that was me. And it was just me never being on a stage pole before. And I was like, this is so scary. And I was just such a puss.
and you probably didn't have a friend there or anything, or anyone telling you like, go gently, it feels different. You probably just went up to it and you were like, oh, a pole, the pole.
Exactly. I was like, oh yeah, this will be just like a normal invert. No, was not. So did get easier with use, but it's definitely first time was a bit scary, that's for sure. So yeah, so I think things to think about is the brand of pole that you want to pick and whether it's going to be mounted in stage, and that's going to be to some degree limited by the constraints of your room and the joist, the beams and plaster. So false ceilings or floating ceilings, no go. You want to check those things out first. The best ceilings have concrete ceilings effectively, because there is going to be no movement with the change in weather, things that to consider, which we'll talk about later with hot and cold days. But concrete ceilings won't expand and contract the way other parts of the building will. So safer in terms of less likely to have issues with that.
I think the only consideration with concrete ceilings, if you have popcorn ceilings, which have that very textured render over the top of them, that's kind of pointy and really uneven, that's a bit tough to get a mounted pole onto.
That's a very good point. I was going to say that was a bit of a craze in like the 80s and 90s.
Oh yeah, it was.
Ceilings, wasn't it? Yeah.
We had popcorn walls in one of my childhood homes.
I mean, cool from a sensory point of view, bit unusual.
They collect a lot of dust. Every little popcorn is covered in dust all the time.
Yeah, no, that's not my ideal of a wall in a room. That's for sure. I mean, a good back scratcher if you wanted to, you could probably get up against it.
Sure, let's find the bright sides.
I'm trying to be positive here.
Yeah, always.
The other thing, and we won't go into detail about this, is there's different pole grips. So there's silicon, there's brass, there's stainless, there's chrome, there's something else that I've forgotten in between. I think there's
titanium.
That's it. Yeah. I'm personally a stainless steel girl, but I also like my brass. And it's I really struggle with my sweats. So depends on my day, depends on my hormones, in terms of my menstrual cycle, as to what pole I prefer. Also depends on the moves that I'm doing. If I'm learning a move for the first time, I much prefer a brass if it needs lots of gripping point compared to stainless. But I usually prefer everything on stainless eventually. How about you?
Interesting. Actually, really similar. I'm a stainless lover. However, I have done a lot of dancing on brass because of the bottoms up studio setup where I have taught a lot. The teacher's pole, the one that the teachers usually use, is the brass 38. So I danced on that a lot. However, in my own training, I gravitate a bit towards stainless, and stainless is where I started. Stainless gives me a good combination of grip and slide, whereas brass can be over grippy for me, but I like both of them at different times and in different seasons, hot versus cold, humid versus less humid,
So I didn't think for anyone out there, try get your hands on as many different poles and play with them as much as you can to figure out what works for you. The other one is it's a chrome that people have a nickel allergy to as well. So if you're allergic to certain metals, you've got to consider that. If you're someone like me that has hyperhidrosis and really struggles, then you might prefer brass, or you might actually even prefer the silicone grips, but they are grippy. They are very, very grippy, and they will hurt.
Absolutely.
So you may use that and wear more clothing. So find what works for you, but the best way to do it is literally to try different poles. And then you mentioned before the sizes, so you can get 38 mils, 40s, 45s, and the OGs were 50s. I had an OG 50, was my first, the small pole.
Did you?
I did. And my gosh, it made my grip strength really strong.
Yeah. Right? It gives you forearms like ham, like legs of ham. Like it makes you so strong. But it's very challenging.
Very hard. It was very hard, and it was okay for like my basics when I started learning, but as I started progressing through the levels, I was like, oh my god, the 50s are a nightmare. Would go to the studio, it was like, oh, I feel so strong in these 45s. Oh,
I know.
It was amazing. I now have a 40, so my downstairs one's a 40, and then the one that I'm going to put upstairs is going to be a 45, so that's going to be my studio pole's a 45. 38 is a bit of a dream, but almost sometimes too much of a dream. Like it's just too thin and too easy. I don't know.
I like a 40. I like a 40. A 40 and a 45. Like these days, I like a 40 and a 45. I can find that a 38 pinches me in knee grips.
Yes.
It's just thin enough to pinch, and it doesn't do that for everyone, but sometimes it does do it to me.
Yeah.
So I'm a 40 and a 45. I'm happy there.
Yeah, I'm the same. I find 38 is just a little bit too small. So I'm gonna really enjoy having the 40 and the 45 option, I think, to play around with at home. That's gonna be nice.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
In terms of for people at home when they're listening and they're like trying to figure out the size, probably best to go with what your studio's got, unless you're training specifically for a comp that has a certain requirement and you're like, I'm got a 9-month goal of getting to, I don't know, Miss Pole Dance Australia, and you're like, I need to be on a brass 40 or whatever it is that they use. Cannot remember off the top of my head. Oh, you froze it for a second. There you go, you're back now. But yeah, I can't think of any other reason why anyone would want a certain pole other than just
if you're dancing at a oh, sorry, I think I just spoke over you.
All right.
Oh,
you froze for a moment.
We've got a lag. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay,
You're back. You're caught
I
up.
was just going to agree with you and say go with what you're used to. Like if you are training at a studio and training at home and your studio's on brass 45s and you're having the time of your life and you love it, choose that for your home pole as well. It'll just make life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so we picked our pole. we're going to go on the pole journey. In terms of setting up, the factors to consider, what do people need to think about in terms of actually setting up their space?
Well, firstly, you need to make sure that your space is as convenient as you can make it for use. So some people are lucky and they get a whole room to pole in, you know, a spare room or a bedroom, and they get to set up a garage, and they get to set up an entire room to pole dance in. Not everyone gets that. Some people have to put their pole in the living room, which is where my first home pole was. Some people in the kitchen, and so on. And I've seen someone who had to put their pole in a walk-in wardrobe. Yeah. A lady who, it was a lady who sent a reel to my, I also run with my business partners a pregnancy and pole course, and there was a lady who sent us a reel that we could put on our stories where her baby's room had been her pole room, but then the baby came, and so her pole got kicked out of the baby's room and there was nowhere else to put it, but she still really wanted to pole, so her pole now lives inside her walk-in wardrobe. And I was like, that's so cute. But back to the main point, make sure your pole space is user-friendly. User-friendly means the temperature is controllable if possible. If you are lucky enough to have temperature, or if you have temperature control in your house, make sure your pole room is temperature controllable. That really helps a lot. Watch out for hazards in your pole room. So hazards being things like, a big one is ceiling fan, or dangly large light fixtures, or light fixtures with any profile from the ceiling whatsoever that you can kick. Window really close, window glass or shelving really, really close to your pole. If there is the possibility of you crashing your foot through a window from your pole, then you either have to just be really, really mindful of that if you have no choice, or move the pole. So obstacles that give you inconvenience or danger, like a window, you don't want to stick your foot through a window. Make sure your pole is as clear from those as possible. Like I said, temperature control, making sure everything you need is in one spot for you. So if you have a pole room, this is easy. You can put all your TheraBands and yoga blocks and everything in the room with you. But if your pole's in the middle of the living room, it can be harder. However, just make sure you have a dedicated space where your pole things can go, like a crate where you put your yoga mat, your TheraBands, your little tripod, your, yoga blocks and yoga mat, your pole grips, your sweat towels, your knee pads. It could go on, all the things we use for pole. Just give them a central location no matter where your pole is, so that it's convenient to you to reach for them as soon as you're going to get ready to pole. What else would you suggest?
I use bookshelves to hold my pole shoes. So in my living space, so if you've got a bookshelf that needs to go in the living room and you've got some space in it, boom, makes a really good little spot for your pole heels to go.
Clever. Another really good thing to do when you set up your pole room, and this one isn't a necessity, but it's a nice thing to do, is to scope out your best filming angles. Yes. so that you really know and decide where you're going to be putting your phone to film yourself when it's polling time. So you're not always fiddling around, looking at different heights, messing about. So I always pick a filming location, and then I just know that's where the camera's going to go.
Yeah.
I like to keep, this is just another item I like to keep. I always take a lot of notes. Oh, you can't see this. I always take a lot of notes. I like to keep my pole notebooks with all my pole stuff as well, so that when inspiration strikes, I know where it is and I know where to go find it.
You
I
probably
think
need
those
like
are,
PowerPoints as well in your room. Like if you're
yeah,
a home poller and you're learning from an online platform, you need your laptop. So you want a place that
yep,
you put that's accessible. Like you don't want to be constantly going up and down. You might want to like
yep,
watch something from, you see all those little things in terms of setup that you've got to think about. But you'll need PowerPoints for your phone, for your charger. Like if you
yep.
know things are getting fancy these days, might need a ring light if you're really trying to film yourself and like
Do it.
look fancy. Like do it exactly.
Yeah.
But you're going to think about setup for all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And there's the aesthetic stuff as well, like the aesthetic stuff that can add motivation to training at home. So if you've got a pole room and you're feeling excited about it, decorate it. You know, if you've got photos of yourself polling that you love, or photos of just pole in general that you love, stick them up around the walls.
Yeah.
If you can do colored lighting or fun lighting and you want to, do it. Like adding beauty and motivation to your space actually gives you more motivation to train. If your pole is in a public place in the house and you just don't have the latitude to decorate how you want, you know, how well, maybe you can sneak up a postcard size pole picture somewhere anyway, just so you can have a little peek at it.
Yeah.
Just, you know, fun things make a difference.
So that's what I tried to do so being stuck in the world's longest lockdown, like literally we can say that because it actually was the world's
Yeah,
longest
true.
lockdown. It was for me, every time I'd open my garage door, it wasn't my garage door, it was my pole studio, and I managed to convert it to feel like my pole studio. So it wasn't quite so Divas is my studio, but it wasn't quite like Divas, but it had a Diva-esque vibe for me. And so I had pulse floorboards down, so click and lock floorboards, and that was me being able to do that. It was a bit of an extra expense, but that was my choice at the time. And it was like that, okay, well, I'm not going to be spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars every week in terms of on classes. I'm going to be spending a small amount now on membership. I can put that money towards something else. So I had the really nice flooring. Carpet's also fine for those who've got carpet at home, but you know, our floorboards versus carpet will be a completely different feel. I then over the year decided to put some lights up, made it a little bit more moody. That way I could turn off the light and have my kind of vibe. Had some colored lights that I got for cheap online. And then over the last year, I decided to put a curtain up so I could hang it over the lights and create a real sort of silhouette look. So when I turned it off, it was like, oh, I could just go no lights and you can just see my silhouette, and it was just really cool. And it was my space that I could walk into, and I felt like I was in a pole studio as opposed to at my home garage. Like I said, not everyone's going to have the ability to have a whole pole room. That's a real luxury. Like I'm really lucky.
It is a luxury, yeah.
It's a real luxury, but if you've got it, then amazing. I've got some patients. I've got one I can think about who has like LED, like pink strip lighting. That's just
cool.
gorgeous.
That's cool.
Her hubby painted the room pink and put up these gorgeous like full-length mirrors. Like mirrors are very helpful if you've got access to it. We've got Bunnings in Australia. I don't know what everyone's got else overseas, but you can get some really like awesome full-length mirrors. You can get stick-on mirrors. You can get like some cheaper versions and alternatives that you can manage to, you can go all crazy if you wanted to, but
you can go full out. Like you can purchase enormous full wall mirrors if you're cashed up and that's what you want to do. Or like you said, you can get the smaller stick-on ones and just pop them strategically where they go, you know, make a little grid strategically where it's going to help you the most to be able to see yourself. Your flooring concept is also a good one. Like carpet is good. Carpet's fine to dance on, but it can give you carpet burn. So if you have carpet and you're thinking, look, I keep on getting these little grazes, getting down a hard surface does kind of help a lot. And there's actually some kind of click together floors that you can put over carpet to pole on if you want to.
So that's what I have. So I did put down the insulation first as well because I have concrete underneath. So I just made it a little bit softer for me. But technically the flooring that I've got, you can just put straight on top of carpet and you can just let it sit there and the pole will keep it in place. You don't have to lock it down formally. So that's really nice. But if you wanted a cheaper option, you could purchase almost like a lino floor as well and then look at finding ways of sticking it down. So there are definitely go to your local store and see for those who are wanting that. In terms of the space, if I go back to that, so depending on what you're doing at home, if you're full on home polling and you're like trying to do ragdolls and bits and pieces like that, you need space. And so I think that X-pole, and I might be wrong, but I know that 1.5 meters is stuck in my head for whatever reason. And I feel like that's correct, that you need 1.5 meters around if you're trying to do big movements. But if we compare my body to your body, Lisa, you're a little bit taller than me. So 1.5 meters might not be enough for you. I would imagine that people would need to kind of like stand the furthest point away from the pole, lift their legs up and see how far they're
Stick your leg out.
pretty
Yep.
much. 1.5, I'm probably about that. You probably need a bit more. So
I'm about 1.7 tall, but I have like a 1.74 arm span. I've got excessively long arms. So if I grab the pole, stretch my arm all the way out, stretch away, stick my leg out, we're kind of well over 1.7.
yeah.
So, and I'm not
Heels.
tall. Sorry.
Plus
And
heels.
then heels.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So
So
you've got to think about those things, right? Otherwise, you were going to put a really nice hole in the wall, or you're going to, regardless, you're going to kick that bookcase or knock that couch. Broken toes are not a fun time.
No, they're not a fun time.
No.
I think I told you before, I did used to have to pole with a ceiling fan in the ceiling in my old pole. I actually chopped pool noodles in half and stuck it over the blades of the ceiling fan because I kicked that fan. I didn't have any choice in where my pole was going to go, and it was a rental. I couldn't get the ceiling fan down, and it just had to be there. So I pool noodled my ceiling fan.
That is genius. I love that so much. That is it's a very smart idea, and it's a like things like this are just pure gold, because there will be people watching this at home that have a ceiling fan. They'll be like, why haven't I done that? That's amazing.
It's cut your pool noodle in half, get it on, get the other one on the other side of the blade, wrap sticky tape around it. It is so ugly, and you can't use your ceiling fan, but it doesn't slice your foot open if you kick your ceiling fan. I mean, best not to have your pole near a ceiling fan, but really there wasn't anywhere else in my house. Yeah. And I had to have a pole.
Yeah. And let's be honest, there are going to be people out there who are like, I can't have 1.5 meters or 1.7 meters, and that's fine. Right. But then you're not going to be flying around the pole. You then have to limit what you're currently doing on the pole to, very static style moves as opposed to dynamic transitions. And that's, so be it. But you're still going to get a lot out of having that pole up if that's the case.
Well, the world of pole has so much in it. Like, you don't have to be doing a rag doll. There is a gajillion other things you could do instead. So even though you might be limited in a couple of areas, there's still this whole world you can experiment with.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it's home poles are great for creating shapes, is what I found. Like, I really like getting into some pretty shapes on my home pole that I might not do when I'm at a studio, for example. Like, studios, I might feel a little bit more freer to fly around and, work on a phoenix or, whatever it is I feel like doing. But at home, I'm like, I get really motivated to just explore a different world of pole that I wouldn't usually do at the studio. So that's a really interesting thought.
Home polling is also really good for invention, because on your home pole, you can feel a lot more free to just dick around than you do in the studio, because in the studio, you might be there for a class, a 1 hour class, and the class has a subject, this is intermediate 2, and you're doing what the rest of the class is doing. And then if you go to free practice time, you might spend a bit of time chatting, but beside that, you might not feel as uninhibited on the pole to just be up there going, what if I do this? What if I do this? But no, really, but when you're on your home pole, you feel totally free to do that. And I found for me that when I was home polling, it was really good seat of invention for me. Like, I made up a lot of little things that I'd never seen before just because I was completely free to mess around.
Yeah, I love that. I can definitely relate to that as well. Even if I'm in practice time at a studio, I'll still kind of stick to more the syllabus stuff and practice the tricks that I'm being taught. I might dick around a little bit, but I'm still conscious that people might be watching, even though they're probably not watching whatsoever. There's still that little voice in my head just being like, just do the thing. Versus at home, I'm much more likely to explore movement and try things and be like, okay, does this feel sexy? Does this feel like, am I feeling this? And then I look back on a video and think, that actually, like, that can become something, and I might not have tried that if I'm in the studio. So that's a really good point.
That's right.
Or like, different shape, and be like, well, what if I decided to just do this weird little thing, like, arms next it becomes
like, oh, it's good.
You're like, okay, might not put this in a routine, but as a shape, it's sick. Or actually, I want to see where this goes. I could put it into a combo or something, or make something from it. Yeah, definitely. I feel a lot more expression freedom when I'm polling at home than what I would at the studio. That's for sure. Yeah,
me too. I've always preferred training alone, and whether that is at home or in practice time, like in studio time that is only for me. So not free practice time, but rather studio hire time or stuff like that, or teacher development time when it's just me in the studio. I always feel my most free when I'm completely alone on the pole.
Yeah.
So home polling for me did work for me really well for years.
Yeah, love that. It'd be miss of us to not talk about pole safety. So we always see the fails, and they give me a little bit of they give me heart palpitations when I see them, I'm not going to lie. And I'm sure that other people feel the same. So we've already spoken, there's just dodgy poles out there, like there are. And so a lot of the pole fails can be avoided, but there are also not dodgy poles, like some that we've mentioned before, that you can still have pole fails on. And so per the requirements of setting up a pole, you're taking your own safety into your own hands, and there are requirements that you actually should be checking off. And so I think one of them is that you should be checking every pole joint in terms of tightness before you actually train. So I actually just incorporated my warm-up. So I'll be like, okay, I've done my warm-up, perfect, I'm feeling good, boom, check my pole tightness. So I haven't actually lifted myself off the ground at that point. I'll also, before I even start my warm-up, I'll pull on the pole in every direction, and I'll like do like a little swinging around in a circle and like just give it a really hard yank, make sure there's zero movement whatsoever. But yeah, on top of that, I also tighten the pole joints every time. Is that kind of along the lines of what you do as well, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't home pole, right? I don't have a home pole now, but I did for years. And yes, and a lot of people say this, and I actually did it as well, is to draw a circle around the base of your pole, or the top and the base of your pole with a pencil, because if your pole shifts at all, you can see it perfectly clearly. Like if you're on a white ceiling and your pole shifts 0.5 centimeter and you don't have a black circle drawn around it, you can't actually see that with your eyes. But if it shifts outside of its little black circle, you know it's shifted. So that's just a little hack that I really like. And yeah, give it a little tighten before you pole. Make sure there is no movement in it. Get that little circle on the top and on the bottom, and just give them a little check every time before you pole.
Yeah. And I know X-Pole specifically require that you check your pole every 30 minutes whilst you're actually polling. So I believe they stipulate that if you're 30 minutes into a training session, cool, come down and go again.
Give it a little go.
Give it another yank, make sure it's not moving, because during a training session, you're putting load through the pole and it may shift. Well, so it might not be shifting at the start, but it might start to show signs of shifting during the middle of it. So if you need to rechecking your joints and making sure, and I know people will be like, oh, that's so annoying. Yeah, so it
takes no time.
It takes no time.
It takes practically no time.
Yeah.
And you touched before on the building materials of houses actually being somewhat malleable depending on weather. Like if you've got really dry weather versus really humid weather, that's going to affect how the timbers in your house move. So if you've got a mounted pole and you've had a streak of really, really dry weather, you can actually get contraction in the timbers of your house. If you've had a streak of really, really rainy weather, you can get swelling in the timbers of your house. And this changes the firmness of how your mounted pole is situated. So, you got to check every time. Even though you think nothing has changed, there can be things that have changed that are beyond what you can see.
Yeah, spot on. And then in terms of like learning new tricks, I'm a big one for safety, clearly, but crash mats, and not everyone can afford crash mats. Yeah, and not everyone needs a crash mat as well. So I will put it out there that there are some professional polers who won't need a crash mat when they're learning certain tricks, but there are professional polers who need crash mats for other tricks. So it's going to be trick dependent, it's going to be danger dependent, I guess, and it's going to be your skill set dependent as well. So not every trick needs a crash mat, but I'm a big fan of them, and perhaps not everyone can afford one at home. Makeshifting crash mats can sometimes work. I mean, they're going to soften your fall, but they're not going to be the safest thing either. Like I've certainly done that before, where I've grabbed the giant pillows from my couch cushions and thrown them at the bottom of the pole and gone, okay, I'm going to specifically do this on this side of the pole. And I've got a grumbly dog next to me that you can't see. He's very cute. But I put things on one side of a pole and being like, okay, I'm going to do the trick on this side in case I need to. That's there. Crash mats are ideal, but not everyone's going to be able to afford them. But do you have any thoughts on that?
I do love a crash mat for, it's an invisible dog.
Invisible dog, I know. Can you
totally invisible?
I promise he's there.
Oh, he's fading in and out of another dimension.
I know. Hey there.
Oh,
If I let you jump up, can you be seen? Yes. Oh,
there he is. There he is. Oh, in part. Oh,
He's
puppy.
his bow tie on because he's a handsome
Look at
dog.
him.
He's
Oh,
a Japanese
handsome dog.
Oh, he's got my hair though. Ah,
Oh.
thanks, buddy.
On crash mats, I used to use couch cushions. This is way back before before any pole crash mat companies existed. So I used couch cushions, and I found them very comforting when I was trying to learn, new inverted tricks where I wasn't entirely sure of my grip strength in relation to what I was about to try. I found the couch cushions pretty comforting. A custom built crash mat is obviously better. And I don't think that we can really recommend that you put down couch cushions. Like, ideally, you want your custom made crash mat. However, many of us have used things like doonas. For non-Australians, a doona is a big fluffy blanket like you use on your bed in winter, folded up many times, or couch cushions or things like that.
I was gonna say he's just a bit needy. Sorry, everyone.
Oh, look at him.
He's pretty cute. He has his moments.
He's just so gorgeous. Look at that face.
He loves a cuddle. Loves a cuddle. Yeah, I was gonna say, so I know Loopit do sell a crash mat, and I think there are a couple other companies out there that also sell crash mats, but this might be one where the cheaper option's not terrible. So I mean, from a safety perspective, it's just not going to have as much padding, and I know you can get different heights, but you might be able to get away, for anyone out there who's on a budget, getting the cheaper ones, and that might be enough for you. And then you might throw some extra couch cushions on top if you need to, if you want a proper crash mat. Otherwise, we can't recommend couch cushions, like you said, but it for me in the past has been quite reassuring to have something there as opposed to nothing. Yeah,
you can also go to a place like so you can actually find pole crash mats at a somewhat reasonable price with a Google search, and they always have their specs on them, so you know how the thickness you're going to be buying when you actually look at the product listing. There are also places like Clark Rubber in Australia, which is a big foams and rubbers warehouse, where you can buy huge pieces of foam of various thicknesses that basically are what they use as the inserts in crash mats. So that is something you can look at, because then you will actually have the material that is used in crash mats at possibly a cheaper price. Again, I'm not exactly recommending that, but I'm saying it exists.
It exists, exactly. You took the words out of my mind, because I was literally thinking Clark Rubber or foam shops. It's the exact same thing in terms of the material. It's just not the exact same thing
inside the crash mat. Yeah,
but you can always create a circle, get them to cut out a circle, and then create a slit, and then boom, your crash mat,
a little slit, and put it around your pole.
Yeah, exactly. So there are definitely, because I know that I've had a few questions about things being like, I want to do this, but finances are stopping me. So that's an option. Other things to think about, I guess, frequent hydration, making sure you've eaten something before you've poled, because you're polling potentially by yourself. And then on that is spotters. So getting a spotter from home, they're not going to understand quite like your pole instructor, but if you can instruct them in a way that they can spot you, that's great. When you live by yourself, which is what I am, I find that I actually like to message a friend and say that, and this is my little safety hack, is I message a friend being like, hey, I'm about to pole. I'll contact you in 30 minutes, and I'll contact you every 30 minutes, effectively send you a message to let you know I'm safe. But also I'll contact you when I'm done the pole session. So they just know that's my thing. And so that way, when I'm done, no one's worried about me. But if they don't hear from me within 30 minutes, they're over at my house. They're there. And I know it's a very morbid thing to say. I know, but
morbid.
As a physio, these are the things I think about. Pole has inherent risks, and one of them is falls, and you don't want to be falling. And I mean, I'd like to think that if anything did happen, I could obviously get my way out of it and catch myself before anything bad happened, but you can't ever guarantee that risk. So I like to make sure that someone always knows that I'm poling if I'm home by myself, versus if I have a housemate here or a friend over and spotting me. Completely different situation, but they're very helpful. Do you have any?
I really like that text message. I like that text message idea. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I've never done that, though I would. I think it's a good idea. I have taught a couple of boyfriends over the years how to spot various things, just because I know what I'm about to do, and this is, back in the day, and I'm standing at the base of the pole going, I'm gonna go upside down, you hold my bum. Like, I've actually taught them. And if you are home polling and you don't have access to a studio and you do need to teach someone in your house how to spot you, make sure you tell them what you need them to do as well. So you have to think beforehand, do I want them, if they feel like I'm going to fall, do I want them to pull me away from the pole? Do I want them to gently push me towards the pole? Do I want them to apply upwards pressure? Do I need them to tip me one way or the other way? So when you are getting spotted for something, don't just tell them, hang on to me. Have a little think about what you want them to do if they feel like your position is suddenly becoming dodgy, or if you say your little safe word. So you can have a safe word too. So you can be up the pole and you can tell them, if I say now, you need to lift me and push me towards the pole gently. So you can instruct them with specificity on what you need from them.
That is brilliant advice. I love that so much, because partners are sometimes the best spotters out there once you've taught them. And lots of you have seen some amazing professional dancers be spotted at home, and you see their partner come in and I'm just like, wow, they know their stuff. Like, I want one of those. Where can I find a partner like that? And it takes years of practice and teaching them. Communication is so important, and actually guiding them. I think that's perfect in terms of, okay, this particular move, I need to be lifted in this manner, in a slow and controlled way. Or, I'm falling out of it. I'm having trouble. This is where I'm, having issues. I keep on falling out of my Aisha. Can you help to correct that tilt? Hold me and think about applying counter pressure. That sort of information is gold, and they will then know exactly what you're after. Oh, I love that so much. That's a really good tip.
Thanks. Yeah. And you need to tell them too, you need to have a safe word where when you shout now, they do the thing, but you also need to tell them that they need to feel your body as well. So any sudden movements like this, they need to know that they have to put the plan into action, whether you've spoken or not.
Yeah. And they also need to know when your bail point is. So or when it's not safe for them. So again, I kind of put my physio hat on here. We get taught never to catch a patient when they're falling. And it's purely for our own safety. There are exceptions to that. And I'm thinking hospital based more than like, catching someone on a pole. Completely different situation. But if if a 100-kilo guy is falling over, he's going to take me down with him if I go to catch him. But there are definitely mechanical ways on a pole when you're spotting someone to make sure that you're safe for your own body as the spotter. So being really aware of that. If someone's trying to do a handstand and they're like only making it up 45 degrees, there is no point in you catching them and trying to pull them up into a handstand. That is going to hurt you as the spotter. So making sure they're aware of like okay, when I get to this point, that's when you kick in. Like there is like your own safety as a spotter as well, and then the pole's safety. So there's so much to think about there. So there needs to be like bail points and going, okay, no, or a safe word that's like I need to come down safe word. I don't know. It could be something random like apple. I don't know what it's
I've taught students this a lot. So I've taught, so some places are like, we don't allow students to spot students. And then there are some situations where you might be teaching a group of genuinely elite students who compete at national levels and win national prizes. They train on their own with their co-competitors and they are spotting each other. There's nothing you can do about that. That's their life, and in those situations, I've taught people there to actually in class, what I teach is hold and stop. And so hold means hold and stop means down or let me go. So, hold. Yeah, hold.
Yep,
stop means it's time to come down. So that's like I guess saying down might make more sense, but I've always used stop. So, hold means this is good, hold, and stop means that's my bail. I'm coming out, I'm coming down. So then the spotter knows to guide down or to back away or to, what's appropriate for the situation. But I'm talking about these girls are really experienced polers. So you have to go into a little bit more detail when you're teaching a partner to spot in terms of your communication. But for those girls, those two words worked.
I love that. I think that's great. That's what I would use with a partner or a spotter. I would be like down or stop. I've used both of those before, and hold. And then, if you need to give them feedback during being like more pressure, like you could, use additional words, but I think hold and stop and down are perfect words, and people can pick their own. I think that's great. Great information.
Yeah, and you pick your own. You just make the decision. This means hold me there. This means fuck help me now. This means I'm bailing, let me down. You just make make the decision and pick the words. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter what they are, but pick them.
The other one I was going to say is self-spotting, because you can self-spot. And I think the easiest way to do it is to always do the move on the ground first, or low to the ground. So as a self-spotting, so you can almost hold on to the floor as a technique from a safety point of view. And I think if you're learning from home, that is the best way to do it before trying to take things aerially.
Low and slow.
I love that. I'm going to remember that one, low and slow. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, dynamics is a whole other kettle of fish, but for many things, low and slow, please.
Absolutely. So, okay, we've picked our pole, we've set it up, we've got a good space. We've talked so much about all of that, but it's really important. This is the stuff that people just want to know, and they're constantly DMing me about. So I'm glad we're doing this. I want to go into PoleSphere specifically though. So we've got the pole set up. It's time to now actually pole at home. There are many different platforms out there. PoleSphere was one of the very few that actually existed pre-COVID. It was kind of like you guys almost predicted it, but I'm not going to blame you for.
No, let's not put that rumor out there.
No, you didn't. But you were well set up and well equipped to handle the demands of what happened in those couple of years, because you weren't trying to rush to put things together. It was a great established platform, and there's so much I really like about PoleSphere in terms of the way it's set up. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. I like genuinely love the way, and I know Georgia's, and we've got Georgia coming on to talk at some point. She's done a brilliant job coding it and designing it. And you would the powerhouse, the minds behind it all, in terms of going, this is exactly how I want and this is how it should look. And I'll show people through it in a moment just so they can see. But talk to me in terms of maybe like where PoleSphere came from, the idea, like why.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. Well,
I was like putting you on the spot there.
I'm like, where did we begin? Put an echo here. Begin. My business partner, Ali, in 2017, I believe it was, had the idea to do a pole platform online. She didn't have it formulated as PoleSphere just yet, but she had a slightly different idea actually, and we ended up going in the PoleSphere direction. And she asked me, do you want to be a part of this? And I said yes, and Jane was a part of it. And so we three put our heads together and created PoleSphere. And what we did is we had a good look around at what was available in the pole online tutorial marketplace at that point, and kind of picked out what we felt were shortcomings of what was available, and gaps, not gaps in the market, but gaps in terms of what we would want to give to students that wasn't available online, like what's missing from online learning. And really quickly we realized what was missing was progressive learning, because in your studio you learn progressively. Before you can learn a coil spin, you must know a chair spin and a range of other steps in between before you get to your coil spin. Yeah. And that notion is progressive or scaffolded learning. And it's a really important concept in pedagogical theory, like the theory of teaching and learning. And we found that kind of theory, that kind of learning wasn't super available in online learning platforms. Many of them at that time were just a large library of tricks. So you would go into them and just pick a trick. And when that trick came up on screen, no one told you what the prerequisites were. Like if it was a coil spin, no one in that tutorial would say to you, before you try this move, you need to know a martini spin. You need to be really solid in all of your beginner spins, and those are all listed below. And you need to be able to do this kind of invert. You need this, you need that. So we designed a platform where every trick we have has prerequisites. So when the instructor comes on screen and they go, hello, today we're going to teach you a Jamila, they then say the prerequisites for your Jamila are, and they list the movements that you must be competent at before you're allowed to do that tutorial. And all of those movements are listed below as clickable tutorials themselves. Now, let's say they say, one of the things you really need to be great at for your Jamila is an upright split grip. And you think to yourself, oh no, I'm not good at my upright split grip. Well, you go below the Jamila tutorial, you click on the upright split grip tutorial, and the teacher comes on and they say, hi, welcome to the upright split grip tutorial. Your prerequisites for this tutorial are, and they list out the things you need. And if you realize, oh no, I don't have an X, then you go below that tutorial, and so on.
Yeah.
And we worked so hard to make that a reality. Like, it is a web. You would be surprised what a web of interconnectivity pole dancing is, especially when you have over 300 tutorials, workshops and stuff on the platform. The web in the back end is insane. And we also have, so we have regressions, which is like the most important thing, but we also have progressions to many tutorials, so that once you've mastered that tutorial, you can have a look below it and see what your progressions are. Where do I go next? What can I now learn since I've mastered this one? And we also have foundational moves linked, and foundations are useful things to have. So let's say you're going to do a jade split. You don't have, it's not a prerequisite to do a jade split to be able to do a flat split. You're allowed to learn a jade split if your split only looks like this. You know what I mean? You're not going to hurt yourself if you've got all the prerequisites. You're strong enough, you've got your leg hangs, you've got your hip hold, you know, you're all good to learn a jade split, but you don't have a flat split on the ground yet. Yes, you are allowed to try to attempt to learn your jade split. It might not be flat yet, but that doesn't mean it's unsafe.
Yeah.
However, below our jade split, we'll have a foundational move, which is a split stretching tutorial.
Yeah.
So it's not a prerequisite, but it's one of the foundations that will help you get there. Yeah. So there's a differentiation there between prerequisite and foundation. So we've got that programmed in as well. We've got the prerequisites, and we've got related moves programmed in as well, which is a move that's neither a progression or a regression from a jade split, but it's kind of related to it. Like moves that are in this similar family of tummy to ceiling split shapes that have a lot of things in common with jade, but are neither a prerequisite for it nor a progression from it. Like, sorry, that's a lot of talk, but we've really tried to make this interconnected web so that people can know what they need to learn a move and then understand how to grow from there.
Yeah. So you could be looking at a jade split, and then it'd be recommending a forearm split of some sort, or like, you know, any other sort of split variation. Yeah, it's amazing. It's great because you're like, I'm just really feeling splitty today. Like, I've got a great split day, or I'm just feeling like this is what I want to learn. Boom, here's your prerequisites. Let's have a look at it. I'm going to bring it up in terms of for everyone to see. Can you see the screen there, Lisa?
Yeah, I can.
Good. Okay, so this is my PoleSphere for everyone to look at. So this is when I log in. This is my homepage that I see, and I get to access courses because we've got the Pole Mamas course that we've spoken about very briefly at one point. But what I was going to say, Phoebe and I chatted about this in great detail. The Pole Mamas course, for anyone who's interested, go back to the talk that Phoebe and I did, and it would be basically found in that point there. But we're going to look at the tutorial section today.
Have a look at home. Have a look at home. I've got something to show people in home. So I'm like, have a look at home.
That's okay. We'll see. My computer's a bit slow because we're obviously recording.
It's fine. Internet, Melbourne internet.
Oh,
something with PoleSphere is, so we've got this recently added feed, which will show you what the newest tutorials are that pop up on PoleSphere.
Love that.
We've got playlists that we make for you. So you can see here in the playlists, you've got your December choreography class. You've got all of your we haven't done January yet. All of your playlists that we've made for you for the month of December.
Oh, I love that. And I was going to say, look, beginners there, I love that, particularly for people who, when they're wanting to start out, they're usually like home poling that beginner intermediate level. Like, that's kind of when they're getting into it. That's fabulous. Yeah.
And up the very top here, we've got recommended for you. And the recommended for you will become populated when you work all the way through enough tutorials. So there's a certain level, enough tutorials that the platform algorithm learns the kind of things you like. And then the system recommends things to you specifically based on your tastes.
There you go. I need to watch more videos, don't I? I need to watch more.
So you have to watch a bunch all the way through, like it's this cumulative thing.
Love that. I knew that you had the playlist. I think that's fabulous. People can make their own individual playlists as well, can't they? Where they can like add like different videos and create a playlist for that particular training session. So that what you're saying before, like schedule the moves that you want to do. So you can almost create your own pole class where you've chosen 4 or 5 tricks you want to learn. You're playing them back to back in a playlist. So you might put your start, and it's just very cool. It's very easy to
in the
use.
saved by you. So underneath playlists, you've got saved by you.
Yeah.
And that's where you can make your own playlists.
Great. Love that. And then I was going to say, I mean, you've started doing workshops as well recently where, I mean, we didn't even spoken about your instructors yet. You literally have some Australia's best instructors, effectively, if not some of the world's
So good.
It's so good. But I love this. Andrea's done one on the gun show, which obviously a bit of a session there. Philip's done one on base work. So that would be a whole, like, I imagine, class-based as opposed to just like a tutorial, but that would be a class-based workshop on floor work versus here. I was going to say that looks like one of the Blizzaks. Yep. I was going to say obviously doing a tutorial on a basic flare, and then Philly doing one on cup grip. So is that you? Or was that Carly?
No, that there is Tammy. Tammy from Queensland.
Yeah, I'm like squinting eyes there, trying to figure out who that is. So then a tutorial there on cartwheel hooks. I love it. This is fabulous. So I love that Tammy did a Halloween workshop last year.
It was creepy, a bunch of creepy, weird tricks.
Oh, I love that.
It was fun. If you like the creepy stuff, it was fun.
So you can still access this, which is brilliant. I think it's fabulous. And so I'm going to I probably could type it in there, but I'm going to just click on the tutorials page for everyone to see. So this is the library of everything, which you can scroll down through. You can sort it through by level, instructor, apparatus, etc. But I'm going to just jump straight into a trick. So I'm going to go for a butterfly.
Oh, yep.
You kind of spoke about Jamila before, so I was like, well, let's just choose a butterfly. So let's go here. So Carly's taking the butterfly here, and what I really like is straight away is it tells you here your prerequisites, the progressions and regressions they're going to show you, as well as the foundation tricks. So if I go into play, I won't play the actual video itself. What I do love is once my computer fixes up the there it is. It's all better now. I love how cute and quirky the videos are. Whoever's edited it has done an amazing job of like making
me.
Well, there you go. You've done a great job of making them. They're actually really fun. Like it's not just
this
like
this one's from our old editor, but these days I'm the editor. So all the jokes in the videos.
I love them. I actually love them. But anyway, we'll skip down to the bottom here. So it goes on to say, okay, well, if you want a butterfly, you do need a basic invert and you need an outside leg hang. So if anyone's watching this and going, oh, I want to learn how to butterfly, that trick looks really cool, but they don't have their outside leg hang, they can just boom, click on this and it will take them straight to that video there.
Although your split grip should be there. So I might actually have to add that in.
Okay, well, and it's there.
Yeah. So your split grip, your inverted split does need to be there. So either it hasn't loaded or I haven't popped the link to it into the back end. So this is a good reminder.
Cool.
Sometimes you find this. So I'm going to put my inverted script.
That's Lisa doing her homework there. So then if I was to go on to regressions, so if I'm like, okay, well, I don't actually have, I don't think I'm up to doing my butterfly yet. Cool, I can work on these things here, or
so my inverted split grip needs to go there.
Yeah, and if I want to work on my progressions, all right, well, I might look at my extended butterfly, might be one of those. Or I might be looking at this intermediate static combo that was put together there. If I was to do like a, Jamila to butterfly, I think you've got one of these on there somewhere.
Yeah, that's going to be floating around there.
There we go.
There it is.
Yeah, so I'm going to say butterfly to Jamila flips or Jamila
go to the Jamila to end extended butterfly. I like that one, I think. From memory, we were filming with Sawasa. I really enjoyed. Yeah.
There we go. So then this would be a nice little progression as well there for people where they're like, okay, well, I want to work on this, and then they can click on, progressions, and boom, once they've nailed their extended butterfly from their Jamila, they might want to start working on their Hunter press made famous by Carly Hunter, the person who's actually demonstrating it in this video, because like I said, you've got literally some of the best in the world. So you can just keep on going, and then it's fabulous. The other thing I really like is you've got the quiz, which is really cute. So after every trick there's a quiz where you can actually answer questions that that the instructor teaches throughout the actual tutorial, and you can create these little diamantes, and it's adorable. It's just like a fun way of learning. So I think it's fabulous. And then the members,
I did a little quiz for members recently about how many people use the quizzes, because not everyone not everyone enjoys that style of learning. Some do, some don't.
Yeah.
And I found from the respondents, about a quarter of our members use the quizzes on the regular, which is a good amount. Like, so we've got about 25% of people who use the site really love the quizzes and use them all the time, which I'm really happy with, because, you know, a lot of people don't enjoy that kind of learning, but we've got this kind of significant minority who really find the quizzes useful. So I'm really glad we did them.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy them. And I like that they're just not long. They're not like,
no, they're not long.
No, they're like literally 4 questions there. And I was going to say the members lounge as well. That's what I also really like, is that you have a community around PoleSphere, and which I'm a part of the members lounge. So I get to see all the fabulous posts that people put up of them like nailing their tricks or asking questions. And it's great. And I like, one of the things that you do is you get people to put their qualifications next to the name in the members lounge. I think that's great. So obviously you've got the instructors that are putting their qualifications, so people know that they're getting someone with real good experience answering, versus someone who's maybe like a newbie who's trying to put in some information, which is fabulous that they're there and giving that, but they're at least going, but hey, I don't have much experience, but from my experience, this, compared to like, I'm there and I'm like, okay, pole 8 years, physio, you know, I can put that and people can go, okay, well, I've got an injury and I'm responding, and they can see where that's coming from. So I love that as a community and that people are actually understanding their experience and learning.
We decided with that little qualification system, and any of our members can talk to each other in the lounge, like it's no one's not allowed, but we decided on that qualification system after hanging out in some of the big pole groups that you see on Facebook, where the advice that's flying around can be like
dangerous,
way out there, I want to say, and sometimes really not good, and sometimes really the opposite of what you should be telling someone. So when we made our private community, we were like, okay, before, one of the rules of our private community in our actual group rules is that your advice needs to be sensible advice only, and if you're not sure about what you're saying, don't put it out there. And you put your little qualification. So if you've been a teacher for 5 years, you write T5 for teacher. And if you've been a student for 10 years, you're S10 in brackets before you say stuff, so that people have a better understanding of where you're coming from with the advice that you're giving. And it's actually worked really well.
So well. But like, I came across this issue the other day where I saw so someone was asking for medical advice on a pole-based forum, and people were just like literally throwing out left, right and center.
I know, it's so upsetting. It's like you could really hurt someone if they take your advice.
Exactly. And that's why, and one of my things was, I was like, yeah, hi, Pole Physio here. And like going into that, so I always put my qualification, and I think pretty lucky most people in the pole community have some idea now who the Pole Physio team are, which is wonderful. So I don't have to sort of go into too much explanation as to my qualifications, but you know, saying straight away you're a physio is very helpful, but kind of then going on being like, hey, it's probably not advisable to be taking information or advice from a general forum. It's nice to hear stories, but definitely getting advice from people that know their shit is going to make the world of difference. So it can be tempting to sort of go, hey, can just random people answer my question? But knowing what someone's qualifications is when they're answering your questions makes the world of difference. So I think having that community and a really supportive community, having the instructors answer, and you know you're getting instructors with so much experience answering those questions, but then also creating that rapport and I think accountability system as well. I know we've spoken about that before with the students amongst each other. It's fabulous. Is there anything
we actually have an accountability, an on-running flexibility accountability thread in the members lounge that has been going for, I'm pretty sure, over a year now, where week on week one of our teachers actually follows up with this group of people about their flexibility over time. So it's like this really long running flexibility accountability thread, and I just love it. It's been going really well, and you're seeing results from people over time, which I love. And the one of the main things with the members lounge is, and you touched on this, that all of our students, all of our members have access to our teachers one-on-one in the members lounge. You tag the teacher, you ask a question, and that teacher will answer you. It's just made me really happy how well it's worked, because when you start something like this, you don't know if it's going to work. You hope it's going to work. You put a lot of money and time into it. And now 2023, like, we're seeing it works, and I feel pretty stoked, actually.
So from an outsider looking in, because I have nothing else to do with PoleSphere from a financially, I don't benefit from this sort of stuff. But I was going to say, from an outsider looking in, I'm happy to be associated with PoleSphere because of how well it works, and I can see how brilliant the system is. I can see how much effort's being put into it, obviously, but I can see the outcome. And there's definitely lots now of online systems out there, and obviously we're showcasing only PoleSphere today, but I've tried quite a few of them, and from none of them have the same model. It's probably the easiest way to explain it. Some of them have some really brilliant parts of it, but none of them have quite the same model of what PoleSphere has, and it's certainly the overall one of the best functioning ones that I've seen out there, if not the best functioning, in terms of just how well-rounded it is as the experience. Because it's easy to feel disconnected when you're a home poler from actually community. You've got the community, you've got the ability to have, you know, questions being answered by, you know, the best, as well as then the tutorials you need. You've got the progressive learning. It's inclusive from that point of view. There's no grading. You're not required to pass a formula if you physically cannot. If you are a disabled polar and you are lacking, you know, or if you have a limb deficiency, and you physically cannot do a split grip, then you don't have to pass Jamila. There are so many other options out there, so it's an inclusive.
You can go for other things.
There's so much about it that I love, that I just
We've actually, home polling being lonely is something that people struggle with, but we've actually had a few sets of members now, our members, meet each other in real life for jams. So they've met through PoleSphere in our members community, and then they've gone in real life and they've realized, oh, we live in the same city, and then they've gone in real life and met in person and done jams and had coffee and sent videos to the members lounge. So, and we've kind of celebrated like these real life pole matchmakings from within our online student community. Like it's made me really happy to be a part of it.
And students have represented PoleSphere in competitions as well, which is just incredible. Yes. Like they've literally gone in and you'll be like, you know, Simone from PoleSphere. Yep. And I'm just like, that's so cool. I remember seeing a couple on stage last year and I was like, this is fabulous. This is so good. It's really a community.
And it's such a thrill too, because they're like, you know, and this is such and such, and they represent, and there's their studio name, they represent XYZ Studio and PoleSphere. And we haven't asked them to do that. Truly, we haven't asked them to do that. We've found out about it the next day when they send photos and videos to the members lounge, or they DM us and we're like, oh my God. It's like, it's just been crazy. And I mean, some of these people who have competed as students of PoleSphere are competing at the state, and is any national level yet, at the state, and I think a couple at the national level as well. And I'm not saying PoleSphere is the answer to that. What I'm saying is we are a part of their mix of training, and it makes me very proud.
Yeah. And so there's lots of home pollers. You've touched on that. I might close the screen unless there's anything else you want me to show whilst I'm here. Anything else that you're like?
Yeah, we talked about the playlists. We've talked about the make your own playlists, and we've had a look at the progressions and regressions a little bit, and I realized I had to do that bit of homework. It's a constant upkeep as well. Like we are always working on the website. Like you go in and you're like, is this perfect? And then we go into the back end, fiddle. Is this perfect? We go into the back end, fiddle. So it's this daily, weekly, constant process of work to make sure it's schmick and running nicely.
Always. I know that feeling as someone who constantly has to update their website. I get it.
and with a big thing like this that has a gajillion backlinks and tags, and it's a whole job. We're happy to do it, but it's a whole job. No, I think we've covered everything. Our workshops, for those who don't know, run once a fortnight. Yeah. And for non-members of PoleSphere, they can pay to attend the workshop on Zoom. But for PoleSphere members, the workshops are just included in your membership, full stop. And we upload, if you can't make the live time, we upload all of the workshops to the PoleSphere platform, so that if you can't make them live, you get them anyway. And we take requests too. Sometimes our members put requests in the private members community for what kind of workshop they would like to see. And if enough people want it, then it happens.
Amazing. There we go. I was going to say, well, back in the cafe. I thought it'd just be easier for people to see it, because sometimes when I've looked for online platforms in the past, I'm like, I just kind of want to play with it first before I can actually, that's nice. I think it's really good for people to be able to see what it actually looks like on the inside and see that it actually lives up to everything that we're talking about.
And it's pretty too. We spent ages picking the design, like what are our colors going to be? How's it going to look? I mean, that's not one of the most important things about a platform, but still, I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. I like the way we made it look. I'm happy with that.
No, I think it's aesthetics are a big part. It's ease of use is definitely the big part for me, and it's certainly easy to use.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time because I've kept you for so long, and I know at some point I need to go to a pole class, otherwise Mish will kick my butt. So
she's gonna kick your butt anyway.
She's gonna kick my butt. Either way. Actually, for those who, because I've interviewed Mish already, for those who haven't put 2 and 2 together, Lisa is one of Mish's coaches. Well, I think probably at the moment only Mish's coaches. Mish's coach, and absolutely fabulous. And I didn't go into all of your accolades in terms of everything that you've achieved yourself as a pole dancer, because I know every pole dancer is modest and they don't really want to do that. But Lisa herself is an absolute phenomenal champion, and she is one of Mish's coaches. So
thanks.
But yes, you know just as well as I.
She's a fucking dream to work with. Like, she is a dream to work with, you know that. Like, it's just, she's such a gun.
Yeah.
Her Miss Pole Australia piece last year, God, I'm so pleased with it.
You did.
And her exotic Gen piece. Oh, she flogged it. Flogged it. Love it. Yeah, Lisa, her capabilities are off the hook. Off the hook. She's such a gun, gorgeous dancer. Oh my God.
Absolute beast.
Legend.
I say beast, you say gorgeous dancer. We both mean the same thing. Definitely.
Both. She's a beast as well. She's a strong beast. She's also a gorgeous dancer and a joy to work with, as you know.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say you coached both those routines, and they're absolutely phenomenal. So, and I think you've coached many more of hers. So yeah, she's
We'll give 0.05% of the credit to me and 99.99995% of the credit to Mishka, I would say, because you know.
She does okay. She does put a little bit of work in.
She does all right. Yeah, she's all right. Yeah.
Oh, I've got a needy dog back. Anyway, we're gonna almost wrap up, but before we wrap up, I want to talk about the top tips that you have in terms of training at home, because we've already talked about like lots of the advantages. We've talked about grumpy dog, self-direction. You've talked about time, freedom, choice. We've talked about financial benefit. Oh, he's kind of coming in and out.
He's coming in and out. Come on, matey. Oh. Every time I see this dog, he's such a heart melter. He's really coming in and out. He's almost there. Almost there. There he is.
There we go.
Such just a beautiful, handsome boy. I'm so clucky for a dog. Like, I'm not clucky for a baby, but I'm insanely clucky for a dog. I want a dog so much.
He's looking at
you. Like, oh, my pet, my ovaries.
Hello. Can I have a kiss? Oh, thank you. Kiss. Oh, thank you.
Oh, look at
it's pretty that. You do all right. All right. We can cuddle and we'll finish off.
I love him.
Whilst we're cuddling.
Top tips.
Yes.
Top tips for training at home. Create a space that works for you. We touched on this extensively at the beginning of this chat. So create that space that works for you. Keep all the things you need in a location that's easy for you to find and easy for you to get to, all in the one spot. So your stuff's not spread out all over the house. Motivation. Setting goals can really help with motivation. So decide on the things you want to train and the goals that you have before you do your session. So don't just, if you just want to get on the pole and noodle around and do free exploration, totally legitimate. Like, feel free to do that. That's good fun. But if you've been thinking to yourself, wow, I really want to nail my butterfly, then write yourself a little plan. Be like, okay, I'm going to train this part of the butterfly this many times, and I'm going to do this many times, and write yourself a little plan, set a goal, and then go for it. Otherwise, you tend to get on the pole and just faff about. So set yourself goals, helps with motivation. Accountability. If you're someone who struggles with keeping yourself accountable to train at home, setting goals can help with that. So you give yourself deadlines, like by the 18th of February, I will have done 4 training sessions on my butterfly. So that can help you with accountability. But you can also rope in a friend. So if you happen to have a pole buddy who can come to your house and train with you, that's great. But if you don't have that, get online and do something like PoleSphere, where you have a community there that you can reach to and ask for accountability and interact with online. That can be really, really helpful. A top tip for training at home: if something feels way too hard, it probably is. Don't get discouraged. Put on your critical thinking hat and see how you can work around that. So top tip for training at home: if something feels too hard, look for ways around it or ways to learn it. So if you're like, far out, this is too hard, don't give up. Watch the tutorial again. Make sure you're getting all the tips out of it that you can, see if you're missing something. If that doesn't work, look for regressions. So if you still can't do it, ask yourself, okay, what comes before this move? What foundational or regression movements am I missing to help me get this move? If that doesn't work, reach out and ask a trusted teacher, mentor, or peer what you might be missing in terms of achieving this move. So this one, the kind of top tip is, if something feels really hard and you think it's too hard, keep working on it and find your ways to get there. So that's with regressions, that's with seeking help from a mentor, that's with making sure you're watching your tutorials really closely and understanding what you're supposed to do. Set a schedule. I can go on for weeks, right? Set a schedule. Setting a schedule really helps with pole training at home. The pitfall to pole training at home is that if you've got a pole there, you kind of think, oh, I'll pole anytime. But it's not necessarily true. Setting a schedule can really help you be motivated. So, and you need to make sure the people in your house understand that your schedule is kind of set in stone. So let's say your pole time is Tuesday night, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Yeah. That's not your night to watch the kids. That's not your night to cook the dinner. It's not your night to, I keep thinking mow the lawn. Who mows the lawn at night? But it's not your night to mow the lawn. That time slot is your pole time slot. And so you need to make sure that the people in your house understand and respect that, and try and stick to it yourself. It can help a lot with motivation. So set a schedule. What else?
I think the big one for me is manage expectations in terms of like,
oh God, yeah.
Like if you are a beginner and you're looking at a Russian split, not going to happen. Like but find tricks that are appropriate, and that's where, you know, PoleSphere helps, because it gives you that prerequisite list. It gives you what you need to be able to mark off. And if you're looking at any other online platform out there, they may have that, but they usually don't. Not the ones that I've looked at certainly haven't. The instructor may verbally give you something, but they usually don't. So just manage your expectations. Don't try to learn a Rainbow Marzenko when you've only been polling for 2 years and you have no gymnastics background. So I think that manage your time expectations, manage your training expectations. Because you have access to a pole, you shouldn't be polling every day. There's so much that we can go into with that. Yeah, but
it really is. The managing expectations one is a big one, because I've said this before, but when people are in a studio and everyone in their class, they're in an intermediate level, and everyone in their class is learning an inside leg hang, they're going to look around at their peers in the class and they're going to see everyone trying really hard and sweating and struggling. Not struggling, you know, too hard if the teaching is really great, etc. But they're going to see everyone trying really hard and struggling, going, wow, it's hard. Wow, it's new. Yeah. And that actually helps to level your expectations appropriately. Yeah. So it makes you realize, oh, this is hard. Oh, this is at my level. I'm struggling with it. My peers are struggling with it. This is at my level. But when you're training at home and you're not surrounded by your peers and you're not sharing that experience, it can be more difficult to set realistic expectations for yourself. Yeah. So in that sense, just make sure you can do the prerequisites for the moves. If you come in and you think, I'm going to learn an inside leg hang, and you're just really struggling with it, you need to ask yourself, have I set realistic expectations? Can I do the prerequisites for this move? And if you go back and you realize that you struggle with the prerequisites, then you're going to go, I was setting my expectations too high. So this kind of scaffolded prerequisite concept can help you to manage your expectations, because you can more accurately find your comfortable level and work from there. So manage those expectations. And honestly, PoleSphere can help with that in that way I just kind of outlined. And it helps keep you safe as well, because when you don't manage your expectations properly, you are more likely to end up injured. And I can really speak from experience, because back in the olden days of pole, I really injured myself quite badly a few times, more than once, and I am paying for that today with some lingering ongoing effects that I just have to live with, because I had no framework within which to manage my expectations, no help, no systems to guide me. But we don't have to do it like that today.
You don't have to get injured, people. We can do it we can do it in a way that's safe now. yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, so in terms of for people finding PoleSphere, so it's polesphere.com, but what I'll do is I'll send out a link with the email, so it'll be in the email, and you can basically click there and it'll take you straight to the tutorial platform sign up. Awesome. So people can people can utilize that if they're interested in PoleSphere. And then you can look at things like the PoleSphere Facebook page, and then you get invited to the members lounge and so forth from there. But I do need to wrap it up because Mish is going to cunt for me, so she'll come for my blood if I don't get there soon. So I'm going to say thank you very, very much, and Theo says thank you too. Is in there. We really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your time coming to chat to everyone about, you know, how to create a home pole setup. He just hit his head. That was quite funny. But yeah, well, thank you for your time. I do appreciate it because I know you're a busy woman. So I want to.
No, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to you guys on the PoleSphere Instagram page or Facebook page, and then they're also welcome to ask us any questions as well through the Pole Physio Instagram page. Excuse me, it's just a bit needy.
He's such a sook.
He is such a sook. He just is a mama's boy. But otherwise, I'm going to then wrap it up there, and we'll do one last cheers with your fancy PoleSphere mug.
Hey, oh yeah, with my merch and branding.
Cheers. Cheers. Thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of the series. Keep an eye out for the next drop, which will be in a week's time from when this video was released. And thanks again, Lisa, for joining. Bye everyone.
Thanks, Simone. See ya.
Bye.